Most people don't realize this, but the loudest prison in the world is not a jail cell, it's the mind, the place where you replay old memories, repeat old mistakes, overthink things that never even happened, and fight battles that exist only in your imagination. The mind can become a storm that never ends, unless you learn one skill: letting go. When you finally release the pain you've been carrying, when you stop gripping the same thoughts that have been hurting you for years, life becomes peaceful again. Today you will learn 7 powerful Buddhist lessons that show you exactly how to stop living in your head, step out of the prison of overthinking, and return to a life that feels light, free, and peaceful again. 1. The mind creates suffering by holding what was meant to pass. Every painful moment you have ever experienced left behind an emotional fingerprint, a memory, a feeling, a shock, or a wound. But the truth is, the pain itself was never designed to stay with you permanently. Pain is temporary. It arrives like a passing storm, meant to teach you something and then move on. The real suffering begins when the mind refuses to let the storm pass. Instead of allowing the moment to fade away naturally, your mind grabs onto it, analyzes it, replays it, and keeps it alive long after the situation has ended. This is why 2 people can experience the same hardship, but one moves on and the other feels trapped for years. It isn't because the event was different. It's because the mind refused to release it. Buddhism teaches that life is always in motion. Everything is constantly rising and falling, beginning and ending, flowing and dissolving. Nothing in this world, not joy, not pain, not relationships, not status, was meant to remain fixed. But the mind hates change. It tries to freeze what happened, as if holding on to it will somehow give you power or control. You may find yourself thinking about people who walked away long ago, replaying conversations that ended years back, or carrying the weight of insults, betrayals, and disappointments that were never supposed to live inside you this long. You may hold on to guilt from a mistake you made once, or fear from something that happened only once, but feels like it happens every day because the mind keeps replaying the memory over and over. The mind believes that by remembering every detail, it is protecting you. It thinks that if you replay the pain, you'll never experience it again. But this logic is false. Holding on to the memory doesn't protect you, it punishes you. It keeps you emotionally stuck in a moment that no longer exists. You end up reliving the same hurt repeatedly, even though the actual event is long gone. This is why Buddhist wisdom says that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Pain comes once, but the story you attach to the pain is what creates long-term suffering. The story becomes heavier than the event. The memory becomes more painful than the original moment. And your mind turns into a prison where you keep yourself locked inside a past that no longer matches your present life. When you finally recognize that holding on is the true root of your suffering, something shifts inside you. You stop blaming the event and start understanding the role your mind played in extending the pain. You realize that you have carried things that were never meant to be carried for so long. You understand that peace doesn't come from rewriting the past, but from releasing it. That's when your grip begins to loosen. You stop clutching the painful memories with the same intensity. You begin to see them as clouds passing across the sky, not as permanent parts of who you are, but as temporary experiences that shaped you and then moved on. With this shift, you stop being a prisoner of your mind. You become an observer, someone who sees their thoughts without being controlled by them. And the moment you become the observer, the mind loses its power to hurt you. The pain dissolves, the heaviness lightens, and a calm sense of freedom begins to return. That is when peace quietly enters your life again. 2. What you resist, you make stronger. One of the greatest truths in Buddhist wisdom is that the more you fight something inside you, the more power you give it. Most people don't understand this, so when a painful thought or emotion appears, their automatic reaction is to push it away, deny it, argue with it, or distract themselves. They think that ignoring the feeling will make it disappear. But the mind doesn't work like that. When you resist an emotion, you feed it energy. When you try to block a thought, the mind clings to it even more tightly. When you try to silence fear, fear grows louder. This is why certain memories or anxieties keep returning again and again. It's not because they are more powerful than you, but because your resistance strengthens them. Imagine trying to hold a beach ball underwater. The harder you push it down, the more force it gathers, and eventually it explodes upward with even greater power. This is exactly how suppressed emotions behave. When you avoid sadness, when you hide from anger, when you refuse to look at your wounds, you may think you are staying strong. But in reality, you are building pressure inside yourself. That pressure eventually shows up in breakdowns, anxiety attacks, emotional numbness, or sudden reactions that seem out of character. The emotion doesn't vanish, it simply waits for the moment when your guard is down, so it can rush back up with full force. Buddhism teaches a different path. Instead of resisting your emotions, allow them to rise and pass naturally. Not because you want to feel pain, but because emotions are like waves. They come, grow, and fade. When you let a wave rise without fighting it, it loses its intensity. When you let an emotion be felt without judging it, it loses its control over you. But when you resist it, the wave grows taller, the emotion grows stronger, and the mind becomes even more chaotic. This is why people feel trapped in cycles of overthinking. They are not stuck because their thoughts are powerful. They are stuck because they keep fighting the thoughts. The battle is what drains them. Letting go does not mean agreeing with the thought or accepting the pain as truth. It simply means allowing the thought to exist without giving it your energy. You observe the emotion like you would observe a passing cloud or a breeze moving through the trees. You feel it without letting it define you. You experience it without making it your identity. When you stop resisting, the emotion stops demanding your attention. It realizes it doesn't need to fight to be seen, so it naturally calms down. Most people think avoiding emotions makes them strong, but true strength comes from facing your inner world without fear. When you allow sadness to rise, it loses the heaviness that comes from being buried. When you let fear breathe, it stops acting like a monster hiding in the dark. When you acknowledge anger, it stops burning you from the inside. This gentle acceptance is what dissolves emotional storms. When you stop resisting, you stop giving your energy to what hurts. The emotion no longer controls your behavior, your thoughts, or your decisions. It becomes something you observe, not something you are controlled by. This is how inner freedom begins. You realize you are not your thoughts, you are not your fears, you are not your past experiences. You are simply the awareness watching them come and go. And in that moment, the burden you've been carrying for years finally begins to lighten. 3. You cannot heal while clinging to the story of your pain. One of the most difficult truths to accept is that sometimes we hold on to our pain, not because we want to suffer, but because the story attached to that pain gives us a sense of identity, meaning, or justification. When something painful happens, someone betrays you, someone leaves you, someone mistreats you, or life breaks you in a way you never expected, the mind immediately creates a narrative around it. That narrative becomes the lens through which you interpret everything that happens afterward. You tell yourself, this happened to me, therefore I am this kind of person, or people are always like this, or life has always been unfair to me. And slowly, without realizing it, your story becomes heavier than the actual wound. The truth is that the original event may have lasted minutes, hours, or days, but the story you built around it can last years or even decades. And as long as the story stays alive, the wound stays open. Even if the actual person is gone, even if the situation is over, even if your life has changed for the better, the mind keeps replaying the same narrative. I was hurt. I was wronged. I was abandoned. I was betrayed. You relive it every time you think about it. And the brain does not know the difference between memory and reality, so it triggers the same emotional response again and again. You think you are remembering, but you are actually re-experiencing the pain. Buddhism teaches that healing begins not when you forget what happened, but when you detach yourself from the story you created about what happened. There is a difference between the pain itself and the narrative your mind built around it. The pain is real, but the story is often exaggerated, repeated, decorated, and kept alive long after it should have dissolved. You may not realize it, but sometimes the story becomes a form of comfort because it gives you a reason for why you feel the way you feel. It gives you a familiar identity to hold on to, even if that identity is built on suffering. This is why some people find it difficult to let go. Without the story, they feel like they lose a part of themselves. But the truth is the opposite. Holding on to the story is what keeps you disconnected from your true self. You are not the victim your mind created. You are not the wounded character in the story your mind repeats. You are something deeper, wiser, and far more powerful. You are the awareness behind the story, not the story itself. When you realize this, you begin to see your pain differently. You stop saying, "This is who I am," and you start saying, "This is something that happened to me." That shift alone opens the door to healing. The moment you separate your identity from the experience loses its power to control your life. Healing happens when you see the story clearly and allow it to dissolve. You acknowledge what happened, you accept what you felt, and you give yourself permission to move on. You no longer feed the narrative with your attention. You no longer define yourself by the wound. You no longer cling to the memory as if it is the most important part of your life. Instead, you allow the story to float away, just like a leaf carried down a river. The river doesn't hold on to the leaf, it simply lets it pass. Your mind can do the same. The moment you stop clinging to the story of your pain, something incredible happens. Space opens inside you, space for new experiences, for new relationships, for new opportunities, and for new versions of yourself that were blocked by the old narrative. Your heart becomes lighter, your thoughts become clearer. Your spirit feels free for the first time in years. You realize you were not healing slowly, you were simply holding on tightly. And now that your grip is loosening, healing begins naturally. This lesson is the key to transformation. You cannot grow into the person you are meant to be while remaining attached to the story of who you used to be. The story kept you safe once, maybe even helped you survive a painful moment. But now, it only limits you. The moment you choose to let go of the narrative, you stop living inside your pain and start living inside your possibility, and that is when life finally begins to move again. 4. Living in your head disconnects you from life. One of the greatest tragedies of modern life is that people spend more time inside their heads than they do actually living. You can be sitting in a beautiful place, surrounded by calmness, sunlight, and fresh air, yet still feel restless and unhappy because your mind is trapped in memories of yesterday or fears of tomorrow. When you live in your head, you don't actually experience the world as it is. You experience the world as your thoughts tell you it is. And most thoughts are not peaceful companions. They are loud, anxious, repetitive, and emotionally draining. This is why someone can have a good life on the outside but still feel broken on the inside. Buddhism teaches that the mind is a powerful tool, but it becomes dangerous when left unobserved. The mind loves to wander, and when it wanders, it rarely wanders to peaceful places. It goes into the past to remind you of moments that hurt you. It goes into the future to scare you with possibilities that may never happen. It goes into imaginary scenarios where everything goes wrong and you end up feeling helpless and overwhelmed. And slowly, without even noticing it, your mind becomes louder than reality itself. When you live like this for too long, you begin to lose connection with life. You stop noticing the small, beautiful moments that could bring you joy. You don't taste your food. You don't feel the warmth of your breath. You don't hear the softness of the wind. And you don't truly see the people in front of you. You become physically present, but mentally absent. You're alive, but you're not living. You're breathing, but you're not experiencing. Overthinking steals life by replacing real experiences with mental noise. Instead of being in the present, you keep replaying old mistakes, imagining painful conversations, judging yourself, or trying to predict outcomes you cannot control. Your inner world becomes so loud that you forget to look at the world around you. You forget that you are sitting in a moment of peace. You forget that this moment is different from the ones in your memory. You forget that right now, in the present, nothing is threatening you. The mind convinces you that danger still exists, even when you are safe. This is why Buddhist teachings emphasize presence, the art of returning your awareness to what is here, right now. When you notice your breath flowing softly in and out of your body, the mind loses its grip on you. When you feel your feet touching the ground, you reconnect with the physical world. When you pay attention to the sounds around you, the mind has no space to drag you into the past or future. Presence acts as an anchor that keeps you from being pulled away by the waves of overthinking. Living in your head also creates emotional distance from the people you care about. You may be with someone, but your mind is replaying an argument from last week or worrying about a situation next month. You lose the tenderness of the moment. You miss the opportunity to feel connected, to laugh, to listen, to truly understand the other person. Overthinking makes you feel lonely even when you are surrounded by people, because your attention is buried inside your mind instead of being present in the moment. The truth is, life is not happening in your thoughts. It is happening in front of you. When you live only in your mind, you miss the life unfolding in real time. You miss the sun rising, the quiet joy of a peaceful morning, the warmth of someone's presence, the small moments of gratitude that could heal your heart. You miss the opportunities that appear without warning. You miss the signs life sends you. You miss the beauty that exists only when you are present enough to see it. But the moment you step out of your head and return to the present, everything shifts. The noise softens. The anxiety dissolves. The world feels lighter. You begin to experience life instead of thinking about it. You taste your food. You notice your breath. You appreciate silence, and you find peace in ordinary moments. You realize that the peace you've been searching for was never far away. It was hidden underneath the noise your mind was creating. Living in your head disconnects you from life, but presence reconnects you to everything. And when you return to the present moment, even if only for a few seconds at a time, you rediscover a truth that was always there. Peace lives in reality, not in the mind's stories. 5. Letting go means choosing peace over control. One of the quietest yet most destructive habits of the human mind is the need to control everything. Outcomes, timing, people, situations, conversations, relationships, and even the way life should unfold. This need for control comes from fear. It comes from the belief that if you let life flow naturally, something will go wrong. So you hold tightly to your expectations, your ideas and your fears, hoping that if you never loosen your grip, you will never be hurt. But ironically, the tighter you hold on, the more you suffer. Control does not give you peace. It takes peace away. The mind believes that if it can predict everything, It can prevent pain. But this belief is an illusion. Life has never followed your plans, and it never will. People change, circumstances shift, and unexpected events appear without warning. Yet your mind still tries to create a sense of certainty by controlling every detail. You replay conversations to make them perfect. You imagine negative scenarios to prepare yourself. You cling to relationships that are already over. You force situations that are no longer meant to stay in your life. And with each attempt to control, you create more emotional tension inside yourself. Buddhist wisdom teaches that suffering grows when you resist the natural flow of life. Everything in existence has its own rhythm, beginnings, endings, seasons, and transitions. When you try to force something to stay that is meant to leave, you suffer. When you try to make someone love you who has already disconnected, you suffer. When you force plans that life is clearly delaying for your protection, you suffer. Control becomes a cage that traps you inside unrealistic expectations, fearful thoughts, and unnecessary stress. Letting go does not mean giving up. It does not mean becoming passive or weak. It does not mean abandoning your dreams or surrendering your effort. Letting go means releasing the illusion that you can control every outcome. It means understanding the difference between what is your responsibility and what is not. Your responsibility is your actions, your effort, your intention, your truth, and your energy. But the results, how people respond, how life unfolds, how your path shapes itself, are not something you can force. You influence, but you do not control. When you cling to control, your entire emotional world becomes fragile. A single unexpected change can shatter you. A single disappointment can break you. A single rejection can make you question your entire self-worth. This happens because your peace depends on everything going exactly the way your mind planned. But life does not bow to your plans. Life follows its own intelligence, and when you stop fighting that intelligence, you begin to feel a peace that does not depend on outcomes, timing, or external conditions. Letting go means trusting that life knows what it is doing, even when you don't understand it. It means trusting that painful endings can protect you from future suffering. It means trusting that delays are often hidden blessings. It means trusting that what is meant for you cannot be taken from you, and what leaves you was never meant to stay. When you adopt this mindset, your heart becomes lighter. Your thoughts become softer. Your stress begins to melt away because you no longer carry the weight of controlling everything. The truth is, the need for control is based on fear. Fear of loss, fear of uncertainty, fear of rejection, fear of failure. But peace comes from acceptance. Acceptance does not mean you like everything that happens. It means you recognize that you cannot fight reality and win. Acceptance is liberation. It frees you from the mental battles you have been fighting for years. It frees you from the constant pressure to make everything perfect. It frees you from the fear that life will fall apart unless you hold everything together with your bare hands. When you choose peace over control, you begin to breathe again. You begin to trust again. You begin to feel present instead of anxious. You begin to flow with life instead of forcing life to fit your expectations. And slowly, you realize that life is actually kinder, smoother, and more meaningful when you stop trying to grab it tightly. It starts giving you things effortless. Opportunities appear. Clarity comes naturally, and relationships feel healthier because you no longer suffocate them with expectations. Letting go is not losing control. It is regaining inner freedom. It is realizing that real strength comes from adaptability, not rigidity. It is understanding that the universe moves with a wisdom far beyond what the anxious mind can comprehend. And when you finally choose peace over control, you begin to experience life the way it was truly meant to be lived, soft, flowing, graceful, and full of surprises that unfold exactly when you are ready for them. 6. Peace comes from releasing expectations. One of the most silent causes of human suffering is not what people do to you, not what life throws at you, not even the hardships you face. It is the expectations you create inside your own mind. Expectations are invisible stories about how life should unfold, how people should treat you, how relationships should feel, how opportunities should appear, and how your plans should succeed. These stories live in your imagination, and as long as reality matches them, you feel fine. But the moment life chooses a different path, even slightly, your peace collapses. Expectations are like invisible chains that bind your happiness to circumstances you cannot control, and whenever those circumstances change, the chains tighten around you. Buddhism teaches that disappointment is born from the gap between expectation and reality. The wider this gap becomes, the more suffering you feel. If you expect someone to always understand you, you will suffer when they don't. If you expect people to love you in the exact way you want, you will suffer when their expression of love looks different. If you expect success to come according to your timeline, you will suffer whenever life delays it, for reasons you cannot yet understand. If you expect life to be fair, you will suffer the moment you face injustice. The problem is not the situation itself, it is the expectation that reality should always mirror the picture in your mind. Most expectations are created unconsciously. They come from past experiences, personal desires, insecurities, cultural beliefs, or the stories you tell yourself. You expect someone to text you back immediately because you fear being ignored. You expect life to reward you quickly because you fear effort going unnoticed. You expect relationships to feel magical all the time because you fear emotional discomfort. These expectations form a rigid script in your mind, and when life does not follow the script, your emotional world collapses. What hurts you is not reality, it is the difference between reality and the reality you imagined. The mind loves expectations because expectations give you a false sense of control. They create the illusion that if you think hard enough, plan carefully enough, and hope intensely enough, life will unfold exactly as you wish. But expectations are fragile. The moment reality takes a different turn, the illusion shatters, leaving behind disappointment, frustration, and emotional exhaustion. Most emotional pain comes from this shattering. You trusted the story in your head more than the flow of life. Letting go of expectations does not mean lowering your standards or accepting mistreatment. It does not mean becoming passive or letting life walk over you. Letting go means releasing the tight grip your mind has on how things should be. It means allowing people to show you who they truly are instead of who you expect them to be. It means allowing situations to unfold naturally instead of forcing them to fit a script. It means allowing life to move according to its own timing instead of demanding that it follow your timeline. When you release expectations, something powerful happens inside you. You begin to see reality clearly, without filters or emotional distortions. You stop misinterpreting situations through the lens of what you hoped for. You stop getting hurt by misunderstandings that existed only in your imagination. You stop forcing relationships, conversations, outcomes, and timelines. You accept things as they are, and acceptance brings peace faster than anything else. Without expectations, you start appreciating people for who they are instead of feeling disappointed by who they are not. You begin to enjoy moments without judging them. You start to value progress instead of insisting on perfection. You understand that life is constantly changing, and instead of resisting change, you learn to move with it. The world begins to feel lighter because you are no longer carrying the emotional weight of wanting reality to always match your dreams. The greatest peace comes when you stop demanding that life be something other than what it is. When you let go of expectations, you stop fighting with the present moment. You stop arguing with reality. You begin to live in flow, where small moments feel beautiful, Simple things feel comforting, and everyday experiences feel meaningful. You no longer walk through life disappointed. You walk through life curious. You no longer fear change, you welcome it too. You no longer judge people harshly. You understand them. Your heart becomes flexible, adaptable, and open. Letting go of expectations also brings a deeper spiritual truth. You discover that happiness is not something life gives you. It is something you create through acceptance, presence, and inner alignment. People who cling to expectations suffer endlessly because they are always waiting for something to happen before they can feel peaceful. But people who release expectations find peace right here, right now, in the middle of imperfect circumstances. Buddhism teaches that when you let go of expectations, you become free, free from emotional burdens, free from mental noise, free from mental disappointment, and free from the constant pressure to make life obey your imagination. You begin to experience life as it truly is, unpredictable, imperfect, beautiful, and meaningful in ways the mind could never plan. And in that freedom, peace lives naturally. 7. When you let go, you return to your true self. There is a version of you that existed long before the world placed its weight on your shoulders. A version of you that was calm, open, curious, trusting, and deeply connected to life. A version of you that did not overthink every decision, did not fear every possibility, did not replay old conversations, and did not carry the memories of people who hurt you. This version of you is your original nature, your true self. In Buddhism, it is said that your true self is like a clear sky, spacious, open, limitless, and naturally peaceful. But just as clouds can cover the sun, your thoughts, fears, memories, and attachments slowly cover your inner sky until you forget what your true nature even feels like. Letting go is the process of removing these clouds, one by one, so that you can finally see yourself again. Most people think that letting go means losing something important, but the reality is the opposite. Letting go means returning to what was always yours. For years, your mind has been conditioned to hold on to pain, to cling to memories, to replay past wounds, and to grip tightly onto people and situations that were never meant to stay. Every one of these attachments placed another layer over your true self. You adapted, you reacted, you protected, you survived, but in the process, you drifted further away from your natural state of peace. When you let go, you are not losing anything that belongs to you. You are shedding what was blocking your light, your clarity, and your true being. Think of all the things you've carried, grudges from years ago, guilt from mistakes you've already learned from, expectations that never materialized, memories that still hurt, fears that never became reality, and the emotional exhaustion that comes from trying to control everything. All of these became emotional baggage that shaped your identity. You began to see yourself as the wounded one, the anxious one, the broken one, the abandoned one, the misunderstood one. And because the mind becomes used to these identities, it holds on to them even when they cause suffering. But these identities are not who you are. They are who you became while trying to survive the storms of life. Letting go is the gentle, gradual, powerful process of peeling away these false identities. It is recognizing, perhaps for the first time, that you are not your pain. You are not your past. You are not your fears. You are not your failures. You are not the stories your mind has repeated to you for so long that you started believing they were true. Letting go allows the real you to breathe again, the you who exists beneath all the layers of conditioning. When you let go of what you are not, you begin to rediscover what you are. Buddhist teachings often compare the mind to a glass of muddy water. If the water is constantly stirred, it remains cloudy, but if you set the glass down and stop disturbing it, the dirt naturally settles to the bottom and the water becomes clear again. Your mind works the same way. When you are constantly overthinking, replaying memories, worrying about the future, and analyzing every detail, the water remains muddy. You cannot see clearly. You cannot feel your true self. You cannot sense peace, because the noise inside you is too loud. But when you let go, when you stop feeding your thoughts, stop gripping the past, stop clinging to fear, stop forcing control, the mind naturally settles. The noise fades. The clarity returns. Your inner world becomes peaceful again, and your true nature rises to the surface. Letting go also reconnects you with your body, your senses, and the present moment. When you live in your head, your thoughts become more real than reality itself. You believe the stories your mind creates, even if they have no connection to what is happening right now. You get lost in imaginary fears, assume the worst outcomes, and interpret life through the lens of past pain. But when you let go, you return to the present, the only place where life truly exists. You start noticing the subtle things you forgot to appreciate: the warmth of sunlight on your skin, the rhythm of your breath, the taste of food, the softness of silence, the comfort of stillness. These simple moments reconnect you to your true self, because your true self exists only in the present, never in the stories of the mind. As you let go, something else happens, something deeply transformative. You begin to trust life again. You begin to trust yourself again. For so long, your mind convinced you that you needed to control everything to stay safe. But control is an illusion, and clinging to it only created more suffering. Letting go reveals a deeper truth. Life becomes easier, smoother, and more aligned when you stop forcing it. You realize that the universe has its own wisdom, far greater than the fearful strategies of the mind. You realize that what is meant for you always finds its way. You realize that letting go is not weakness. It is alignment with the natural flow of existence. Letting go also creates emotional space inside you. When you carry people who hurt you, fears that exhaust you, expectations that frustrate you, and memories that drain you, your inner space becomes crowded and heavy. There is no room for joy, creativity, clarity, or peace. But when you release these things, emotional space returns. Into that space comes a sense of lightness, a feeling that you don't need to carry the world on your shoulders anymore. You realize that you deserve a mind that feels peaceful, not chaotic. You deserve a heart that feels open, not guarded. You deserve a life that feels alive, not weighed down by the past. Letting go is also the key to emotional maturity. When you stop living from past wounds, you stop reacting out of fear and start responding from wisdom. You no longer overthink every small detail because you realize it doesn't help you. You no longer seek validation from others because you realize your worth was never dependent on their approval. You no longer chase people or hold on to relationships that drain your energy because you realize love is not supposed to hurt or exhaust you. You begin moving differently, quietly, calmly, confidently, because your actions come from clarity, not confusion. Your presence becomes stronger because you are no longer fragmented or distracted. You feel grounded, stable, and deeply connected to yourself. This is the beauty of returning to your true self. You start feeling whole again. You stop searching for peace outside, because peace becomes something you carry within. You stop begging life to change, because your inner world has already changed. You stop seeking happiness in achievements, relationships, or recognition, because you realize happiness is the natural state that appears when the mind is no longer burdened by unnecessary noise. Letting go finally reveals a truth that people rarely understand until they experience it. Peace was never something you had to create. It was something you had to uncover. It was always there, hidden underneath layers of fear, memory, expectations, and emotional residue. Once these layers fall away, your true self shines again, calm, steady, open, compassionate, and deeply alive. And this is the ultimate lesson of letting go. You do not transform into someone new. You return to the person you were before the world taught you fear. You return to the person you were before the pain taught you to close. You return to the person you were before the stories covered your truth. You return to yourself, the real you. That is the peace you have been searching for all along. 8. Your healing begins the moment you stop arguing with reality. One of the deepest sources of human suffering is the constant inner argument you have with reality. Every day, without realizing it, you quietly resist what is happening, wishing it were different, hoping situations would bend to your expectations, and imagining alternate versions of life where things went the way you wanted. This internal war is exhausting. It drains your energy, clouds your clarity, and fills your mind with bitterness and confusion. Yet people continue this war because the mind believes that if it refuses to accept reality, somehow reality will change. But life does not transform through resistance. It transforms through acceptance. Buddhism teaches that pain is not caused by what is happening, but by your attachment to how you think things should be. You suffer not because someone left, but because you wanted them to stay. You suffer not because something ended, but because you expected it to continue. You suffer not because something ended, but because you expected it to continue. This tension between what you want and what life is offering creates a constant mental storm, a storm that exists entirely inside your mind. When you argue with reality, your mind becomes a battlefield. You replay events again and again, trying to rewrite the story. You think about how things could have been, should have been, or would have been if certain moments unfolded differently. You imagine conversations you never had, endings that never happened, apologies you never received, and outcomes that never materialized. None of this changes reality. None of this erases the past. None of this gives you control. It only deepens your suffering because you are fighting against something that has already happened and cannot be undone. Letting go begins with recognizing that reality is always neutral. It is your attachment and resistance that give it emotional weight. When something happens, it is simply an event. The meaning, the judgment, the emotional charge, all of that is added by the mind. If you spill water on your clothes, that is just an event. If you lose your job, that is an event. If someone leaves your life, that too is an event. But the story the mind tells, why me, this shouldn't have happened. Life is unfair. I can't handle this. This ruins everything. This is where suffering begins. The moment you stop arguing with reality, healing begins automatically. Acceptance does not mean liking what happened. Acceptance does not mean supporting what happened. Acceptance does not mean saying the situation was good or justified. Acceptance simply means you stop fighting the fact that it happened. You stop pushing against the unchangeable. You stop exhausting yourself with why and what if. You give yourself permission to rest. In that rest, you find clarity. In that clarity, you find strength. In that strength, you find healing. The mind fears acceptance because it thinks acceptance means surrendering or giving up. But acceptance is not giving up. It is waking up. It is recognizing that fighting reality keeps you trapped in the past, while accepting reality sets you free to create a new future. Acceptance is the foundation of inner peace, because you can only find peace in the present moment, never in the imagination of how life should have been. One of the most powerful truths in Buddhist wisdom is this: reality has never hurt you. Your refusal to accept it has. When you lose something, the pain comes from your desire to hold on to it. When someone behaves differently from what you expected, The pain comes from your belief that they should be someone they are not. When life gives you a challenge, the pain comes from your belief that things should be easier. In all these cases, the suffering arises not from the situation itself, but from the inner resistance you carry toward the truth of that moment. Imagine standing in the ocean, trying to stop the waves with your hands. No matter how strong you are, the waves will keep rising. They will keep moving. They will keep crashing. You cannot stop them, and fighting them will only exhaust you. But if you stop resisting and float with the water, the waves support you. The same waves that knocked you down now hold you up. This is what acceptance does. Life's waves no longer drown you. They carry you. When you stop arguing with reality, your mind becomes quieter. The noise reduces. The tension softens. The bitterness dissolves. Most importantly, the energy that was trapped in resistance becomes available for healing. Suddenly you have space to breathe, to reflect, to grow, to choose new paths, and to build a future not shaped by denial but by clarity. Acceptance opens a door inside you that was locked for years, the door to peace. Acceptance also helps you see things as they truly are, not as the mind dramatizes them. When you stop resisting, you stop magnifying problems. You stop exaggerating pain. You stop turning temporary setbacks into permanent identities. You stop letting small moments ruin your entire day. Acceptance returns your mind to balance. It allows you to see the truth clearly without emotional distortion. Many people believe acceptance means passively allowing life to happen without effort. But the opposite is true. Acceptance gives you the clarity to act wisely. When you accept reality, you stop wasting energy on denial and begin investing energy into action. Acceptance does not make you weak. It makes you effective. You respond instead of reacting. You adjust instead of resisting. You grow instead of breaking. You evolve instead of repeating the same emotional cycles. Letting go and accepting reality also transform your relationship with yourself. When you stop arguing with who you are, you stop feeling broken. When you accept your mistakes, you stop carrying shame. When you accept your emotions, you stop feeling guilty for them. When you accept your imperfections, you stop hiding behind masks. Acceptance creates inner harmony because you stop fighting with yourself. You begin to trust yourself again. You begin to understand yourself with compassion rather than judgment. You begin to treat yourself kindly rather than harshly. You become your own home instead of your own battlefield. Buddhism teaches that enlightenment is not about gaining something new. It is about letting go of the illusions that prevent you from seeing the truth. One of the greatest illusions is the belief that life must obey your expectations. When you release this illusion, your inner world becomes spacious, calm, and open. You stop clinging, you stop resisting, you stop suffering unnecessarily. Reality becomes your teacher instead of your enemy. Life becomes a flowing river instead of a battlefield. Your heart becomes soft again. Your mind becomes light again. Your soul becomes peaceful again. When you stop arguing with reality, you step into a place of deep inner freedom. You discover that the present moment, even with its imperfections, holds more peace than any imagined version of the past or future. You discover that you can face anything when you are not fighting yourself. And you discover that healing does not require life to change. It only requires your relationship with life to change. Letting go is not forgetting. It is not pretending. It is not giving up. It is the quiet realization that your freedom begins exactly where your resistance ends. When you stop resisting, you align with the truth. And when you align with truth, peace becomes inevitable. 9. You suffer more from the stories in your mind than the reality in front of you. One of the most powerful teachings in Buddhism is the understanding that the mind does not reflect reality. It creates a version of reality based on your fears, memories, insecurities, assumptions, and unresolved pain. Most of the suffering you experience in life does not come from what is actually happening in the present moment. It comes from the stories your mind tells you about what is happening, or what might happen, or what already happened. These mental stories become louder than truth, heavier than reality, and more painful than the original experiences themselves. And unless you learn to see these stories for what they are, thoughts, not facts, you remain stuck in a world that exists only in your mind. To understand this, think about the last time you felt deeply anxious. Most likely, nothing dangerous was happening around you. Maybe you were sitting on your bed, walking alone, or doing something normal. The danger was not in the world, it was inside your mind. Anxiety comes, not from the present moment, but from imagined futures. Depression often comes, not from the present moment, but from replayed pasts. Overthinking comes not from the present moment, but from fear-driven storytelling. Your mind does, to protect you. The mind believes that if it creates all possible scenarios, it can prevent pain, but the truth is the opposite. The more stories the mind creates, the more suffering you experience. Buddhism explains that the mind is like a storyteller that never stops speaking. It narrates your entire life. It judges. It predicts. It comments. It blames. It warns. It dramatizes. It creates entire emotional worlds that may have nothing to do with reality. You replay what someone said, adding layers of meaning that were never there. You imagine how people might judge you, even though they are not thinking about you. You assume someone's silence means rejection, even though they might simply be busy. The mind takes tiny details and turns them into full stories, often negative ones. This constant storytelling is the source of suffering, because your mind reacts to its own stories as if they are true. If your mind imagines losing someone, your body feels fear, even though nothing has happened. If your mind imagines failure, your heart tightens even though you are still safe. If your mind imagines embarrassment, your body reacts with shame, even though no one is watching. You suffer emotionally from events that exist only in imagination. Pain becomes multiplied because you experience it in your mind, before it even happens, and in many cases it never happens at all. Letting go means learning to see the difference between reality and the stories your mind invents. Reality is simple, direct, and neutral. The present moment contains only what is actually here, but the mind adds meaning, layering its own interpretations, assumptions, and predictions. Someone doesn't text you back. The mind creates a story of rejection or abandonment. You make a mistake. The mind creates a story that you are worthless or doomed to fail. Something ends. The mind creates a story that life is unfair or that you will never heal. These stories feel real because you have listened to them for so long. But they are not reality, they are reflections of your subconscious fears and unhealed wounds. When you begin to let go of these stories, a powerful shift occurs. You start experiencing reality as it is, without the emotional distortion created by the mind. When someone is silent, you do not immediately assume the worst. When plans change, you do not imagine disaster. When challenges appear, you do not interpret them as punishment. You begin to see life clearly, without the fog of overthinking. And in that clarity, you find peace. One of the reasons people cling to mental stories is because stories feel familiar. Even painful stories feel safe, because you have repeated them for years. They give you a sense of identity and predictability. If you believe people always hurt you, that belief becomes a shield. If you believe you are always unlucky, that belief prevents you from expecting anything better. If you believe you are unworthy, that belief stops you from risking rejection. These stories trap you, but they also comfort you, because they protect you from the unknown. Letting go of these stories feels frightening, because the mind does not know how to live without them. But freedom requires releasing them. Buddhist wisdom teaches that the mind is a powerful servant, but a terrible master. When you let the mind run unchecked, it drags you into past and future, drowning you in emotional storms. But when you observe the mind instead of obeying it, you become free. Thought loses its power when you see it clearly. You begin to ask, is this true, or is this a story? When you ask this sincerely, most of your mental suffering dissolves immediately. The truth is, most fears are imagined. Most insecurities are inherited. Most assumptions are projections. Most conclusions are based on past wounds, not present reality. The present moment, when experienced without the mind's stories, is peaceful almost every time. If you sit here, right now, and pay attention to your breath, your surroundings, your body, you will notice that in this moment, there is no danger, there is no chaos, there is no rejection, there is no failure. All the pain exists in memory or anticipation, not in the present. The doorway to peace is always in the present, yet the mind prevents you from entering because it constantly pulls you into past and future. Letting go is reclaiming your access to the present moment. As you let go of mental stories, you also begin to reconnect with your heart. The heart lives in the present. It feels truth directly, without distortion. The mind complicates life. The heart simplifies it. The mind fears. The heart knows. The mind clings. The heart releases. The mind overthinks. The heart understands. When you return to the heart, your inner world becomes softer, calmer, and more aligned with reality. You begin to respond to life with wisdom instead of reacting with fear. Letting go of mental stories also strengthens your emotional resilience. Instead of falling apart when something unexpected happens, you adapt. Instead of panicking when things change, you remain grounded. Instead of spiraling into fear, you breathe. You become someone who can face uncertainty with calmness, because your peace no longer depends on predictions, expectations, or imagined outcomes. Your peace comes from presence, clarity, and acceptance, qualities that stories cannot shake. When you loosen your attachment to your thoughts, you also stop taking everything personally. Not every silence is rejection. Not every disagreement is an attack. Not every change is a threat. Not every ending is a failure. Life becomes easier because you stop reading negativity into neutral situations. You stop assuming the worst. You stop creating pain where none exists. You begin to experience life from a place of observation rather than interpretation. Eventually, something miraculous happens. The mind starts to quiet naturally. The storms become less intense. The fears become less convincing. The stories become less sticky. You are no longer trapped inside your thoughts. You observe them passing like clouds across the sky. They appear, they drift, they dissolve. You do not fight them. You do not believe them blindly. You simply let them be. And in this simple letting be, you discover the deepest freedom of all. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness behind them. When you realize this, the stories lose their power. Reality becomes lighter. Life becomes gentler. Peace becomes possible. And for the first time in a long time, you feel like yourself again, present, grounded, aware and free. 10. Letting go is the only path to a peaceful life. Nothing changes until you release what weighs you down. One of the most important truths in Buddhism and in life itself is that nothing in your life can transform until you release the things that keep you stuck. You cannot step into peace while carrying the weight of old pain. You cannot move forward while dragging the past behind you. You cannot feel free while holding on to resentment, fear, memories, expectations, or people who no longer belong in your life. Letting go is not simply another spiritual idea. It is the foundation of inner freedom, the root of peace, the doorway to clarity, and the key to emotional liberation. It is the one step that transforms everything else. Without letting go, nothing changes. With letting go, everything begins to shift. But letting go is one of the hardest things for the human mind to do, because the mind is built to cling. It clings to what is familiar, even when it hurts. It clings to memories, because they feel like identity. It clings to people because it fears loneliness. It clings to pain because it believes pain keeps you alert and safe. It clings to expectations because they create an illusion of control. And it clings to old stories because stories make the world feel predictable. The mind believes that if it releases these attachments, it will lose itself. But the truth is the opposite. You only find yourself once you let go. Letting go means loosening the grip of everything that is keeping your mind unsettled. It means releasing the thoughts that repeat endlessly, the emotions that drain your energy, the people who take more than they give, the expectations that never match reality, the wounds that never had a chance to heal, and the illusions that kept you stuck in cycles of suffering. Letting go means choosing peace over the familiar pain you've carried for so long. To understand why letting go is so essential, imagine holding a heavy stone in your hand. At first it feels manageable. After a minute, you feel the weight. After 10 minutes, your arm begins to shake. After an hour, the pain becomes unbearable. This is how emotional weight works. The longer you carry something that was not meant to be held forever, the heavier it becomes. Eventually, the weight begins to shape your identity, your behavior, your thoughts, and the entire way you experience life. Letting go is simply setting the stone down. The weight was never meant to be permanent. You may not realize it, but much of your suffering today comes from things you should have released long ago. The broken relationship that ended years ago but still lives in your mind. The hurtful words someone said that you still repeat inside your heart. The mistakes you made that still define how you see yourself. The dreams that didn't work out but still haunt your expectations. The fear of the future that keeps you from enjoying the present. These things are emotional shadows that follow you. Not because they are powerful, but because you continue holding on to them. Buddhism teaches that everything in life is impermanent. People, feelings, situations, seasons, identities, successes, failures, and even your emotions. You cannot stop life from changing. You cannot freeze time. You cannot make things stay exactly as they are. When you cling to what is meant to evolve or end, you suffer. Letting go is not abandoning what you love. It is respecting the natural flow of life. Holding on is resisting life. Letting go is flowing with. Letting go also requires understanding a deeper truth. You cannot control life, no matter how hard you try. You cannot control other people's choices, behaviors, or emotions. You cannot control the past. You cannot control the timing of opportunities. You cannot control how situations unfold. The illusion of control creates endless anxiety, frustration, disappointment, and emotional fatigue. Letting go means surrendering the illusion that life must match your script. It means trusting life's wisdom more than your fears. It means believing that not getting what you want is sometimes the greatest protection. Most people resist letting go because they believe letting go means losing something. But the truth is, letting go is not about losing. It is about gaining space for peace, clarity, joy, growth, inner freedom, and new beginnings. When you let go of what weighs you down, you create space for what lifts you up. When you let go of the wrong people, you create space for the right ones. When you let go of past mistakes, you create space for growth. When you let go of fear, you create space for courage. When you let go of the old version of yourself, you create space for who you are meant to become. Letting go also transforms your emotional world. When you stop replaying old stories, your mind becomes quieter. When you stop gripping expectations, your emotions become lighter. When you stop forcing outcomes, your heart becomes softer. You start to experience peace, not as a moment that comes and goes, but as a state of being. Peace becomes something you live, not something you chase. This transformation does not come from outside. It comes from the moment you decide to release what is no longer yours to carry. To let go deeply, you must first understand what you are holding. Are you holding on to someone who already left emotionally? Are you holding on to guilt from a mistake you've already grown from? Are you holding on to a version of yourself that no longer reflects who you are? Are you holding on to a dream that is no longer aligned with your path? Are you holding on to anger that poisons your inner peace? Are you holding on to fears that belong to your past, not your present? Every one of these burdens is a rope around your heart. When you let go, you untie the rope. You free your heart to breathe again. You stop living in emotional tension. You stop feeling drained by life. You stop feeling stuck. You begin to move differently, more calmly, more consciously, more gracefully. Your energy changes. Your choices change. Your relationships change. Your entire path begins to shift because you are no longer weighed down by what you were never meant to carry. The beauty of letting go is that it transforms you without forcing anything. It softens you. It grounds you. It reconnects you with the present moment. It allows you to see life without emotional fog. It helps you understand that you never needed the things you clung to as tightly as you thought. It teaches you trust, not blind trust, but deep trust in your resilience, your intuition, your growth, and the unfolding of your life. When you let go, you return to your natural state, peaceful, aware, open-hearted, and free. This is who you truly are beneath layers of fear, memory, conditioning, and emotional burdens. Letting go is not the end of anything. It is the beginning of a new chapter, one where your mind becomes quiet, your heart becomes lighter, and your soul becomes aligned with the truth of your life. You do not have to let go all at once. Letting go is a gentle practice, a soft loosening, a daily choice to release one thought, one memory, one expectation, one fear at a time. Each release creates more space inside you. And with that space comes a peace so deep that you finally understand your life was never meant to be lived in suffering. Peace was always waiting for you. It was your attachments that kept you from it. Letting go is the path back home, to yourself, to clarity, to peace, and to the life you were meant to live. 11. Your mind cannot hold peace and overthinking at the same time. Letting go is the only way to create inner space. One of the most misunderstood truths about the human mind is that peace is not something you add to your life. You do not create peace by forcing yourself to think positively, by repeating affirmations you don't believe, or by pretending that everything is fine when your heart is exhausted. Peace is not something you manufacture. Peace is what remains when you stop feeding the noise. It is what rises naturally when the mind is no longer cluttered with fears, stories, judgments, overthinking, and emotional baggage. Peace is your natural state, not something external you must chase. But you cannot feel your natural state while your inner world is filled with mental and emotional clutter. Just like a room cannot feel spacious when it is packed with old boxes, your mind cannot feel peaceful when it is packed with old thoughts. This is why letting go is not just healing, it is essential. Letting go creates inner space, and inner space is the birthplace of peace. Many people suffer not because life is truly unbearable, but because their minds have no space left. Every corner of their inner world is filled with worry. Every part of their attention is consumed by thoughts. Every breath feels heavy because they carry unresolved emotions. Their minds are like a room so filled with clutter that even a small movement becomes difficult. And because the mind is filled, peace has nowhere to enter. The miracle of letting go is that it clears this space. It opens a window inside you. It creates room for silence. It gives peace permission to enter. The mind cannot hold peace and overthinking at the same time, because overthinking takes up all the mental space peace needs in order to be felt. Overthinking clogs the mind like static. It fills your mental landscape with imagined fears, exaggerated stories, repetitive thoughts, and unnecessary emotional reactions. Overthinking is like running endlessly on a mental treadmill, expending enormous energy but never arriving anywhere. The mind becomes exhausted, the heart becomes overwhelmed, and your spirit becomes drained. When the mind is constantly generating noise, peace has no room to breathe. Overthinking is not just a habit, it is a symptom. It comes from fear, from attachment, from unresolved pain, from expectations, from insecurity, and from the mind's deep desire for control. The mind believes that if it thinks enough, it will prevent future pain. But in reality, overthinking creates pain in the present moment. It manufactures suffering out of thin air. It builds a prison out of thoughts, and then locks you inside. And because the prison is invisible, most people believe their suffering is coming from life, when in truth it's coming from the stories their minds keep spinning. Letting go interrupts this cycle. It teaches the mind to soften. It teaches the mind to stop clinging to every thought. It teaches the mind that not every story it creates deserves attention. Letting go is not about forcing thoughts away. It is about recognizing that thoughts rise and fall naturally when you stop holding them tightly. When you stop gripping each thought with fear, your mind naturally begins to release. Thoughts lose their intensity. Emotions lose their sting. The mind becomes less reactive and more observant. You start to feel space between you and your thoughts, and that space becomes the doorway to peace. The reason letting go feels difficult is because the mind confuses attachment with safety. It believes that holding on to pain or fear keeps you prepared. It believes holding on to past experiences keeps you protected. It believes holding on to expectations keeps you in control. But these attachments do not protect you, they imprison you. Attachment is the weight that keeps you anchored to suffering. Letting go does not take anything away from you. It simply returns you to yourself, a self that exists beyond fear and confusion. To truly let go, you must first recognize that your thoughts are not you. They are events, not identity. They are like clouds passing across the sky, appearing, shifting, dissolving, replaced by new ones. When you take your thoughts too seriously, the clouds turn into storms. When you identify with them, you believe the storm is you. But the sky does not become the storm. It only holds it temporarily. You are the sky, not the storm. Your thoughts are temporary visitors. Letting go means allowing them to come and go without building a home for them inside your mind. As you practice letting go, you begin to notice how much mental space you previously wasted. You start realizing how many of your thoughts were unnecessary, how many stories were exaggerated, how many fears were illusions, how many emotions were reactions to events that no longer exist. Letting go reveals the truth. You are suffering from mental clutter, not from life itself. And once the clutter dissolves, clarity emerges with incredible force. You begin to see yourself more clearly. You begin to see others more clearly. You begin to see life more clearly. Peace becomes the default, not the exception. Letting go also creates emotional spaciousness. When your mind is filled, your emotions become suffocated. You do not allow yourself to feel fully because you're too busy thinking about your feelings instead of experiencing them. Emotional pain arises not from feeling too much, but from thinking too much about what you feel. Letting go invites emotional honesty. It gives you room to breathe, to cry, to reflect, to release, and to heal. Emotional pain that is allowed to flow naturally dissolves. Pain that is overanalyzed becomes suffering. Letting go returns your emotions to their natural flow. You begin to understand that peace is not the absence of problems. It is the absence of unnecessary mental noise. You may still face challenges, difficulties, responsibilities, and unexpected changes. But when your mind is spacious, you face these moments with calmness, not chaos. You respond instead of react. You see solutions instead of problems. You remain grounded instead of overwhelmed. Peace does not come from having a perfect life. Peace comes from having a mind that is not polluted by constant fear and overthinking. Letting go also reshapes how you experience relationships. When your mind is filled with expectations, assumptions, insecurities, and fears, you cannot connect deeply with others. The noise in your mind becomes a barrier between you and the people you love. When you let go, you approach relationships from presence instead of fear. You listen more fully. You understand more compassionately. You love with more openness. You no longer cling, demand, or expect from a place of insecurity. You give freely, receive freely, and connect freely because your inner world is no longer congested with emotional clutter. One of the most profound gifts of letting go is that it restores your intuition. When the mind is noisy, your inner voice becomes drowned out. When the mind is spacious, your inner wisdom becomes clear. You begin to sense what is right for you, what is wrong for you, what needs to stay, what needs to go, what needs to be healed, and what needs to be released. You begin to trust yourself again. You begin to move with clarity instead of confusion. You begin to live from truth instead of fear. Ultimately, letting go is the path back to yourself. It is the unburdening of all that you were never meant to carry. It is the release of pain that was never meant to stay. It is the softening of fear that never belonged to you. It is the clearing of mental clutter that kept you from your own peace. When you let go, your mind becomes spacious, your heart becomes light, and your soul becomes free. Peace does not come from adding more to your life. It comes from removing what blocks it. When you let go of what weighs you down, you rise naturally. You do not need to force anything. You do not need to chase peace. You simply need to create space for it. And once that space is created, peace arrives effortless, softly, naturally, like a quiet breeze entering an open window. Letting go is the greatest gift you can give yourself. Because when the mind is spacious, peace becomes your home. 12. The more you release, the more life reveals what was always meant for you. One of the most remarkable truths in Buddhism is the understanding that life is constantly trying to guide you toward growth, healing, and inner freedom. But you cannot receive what is meant for you until you create space for it. The universe, life, destiny, whatever name you choose, cannot deliver clarity, new beginnings, or peace into a mind that is already packed with old stories, regrets, expectations, fears, and attachments. Just as a hand cannot receive anything if it is tightly gripping something else, your life cannot transform if you are still holding on to what no longer belongs in your path. Letting go is not just emotional healing, It is spiritual alignment. It opens the door to what was waiting for you all along. Most people believe that life is not giving them what they want. They think they are unlucky, abandoned, forgotten, or blocked. But in truth, life is always offering the next step, the next lesson, the next growth, the next blessing. What stops you from experiencing these shifts is not fate, it's the inner clutter you refuse to release. The past relationship you still replay in your mind, the old identity you still cling to, the guilt you still punish yourself with, the fear that keeps you small, the version of yourself that no longer fits who you are becoming. These attachments block your vision, your intuition, and your ability to move forward. Letting go is what clears these blockages. It is the internal cleaning that allows life to expand. When you let go, you finally see what is in front of you. You begin to notice opportunities you ignored. You begin to feel emotions you suppressed. You begin to recognize lessons you once resisted. You begin to understand why certain things ended, why certain people left, why certain paths closed. You realize that life is not punishing you, it is preparing you. But without letting go, you remain stuck in the old chapter, unable to open the new one. The mind fears letting go because it associates release with loss. But letting go is not losing. It is returning to alignment. It is clearing out everything that blocks your natural path. Life is always communicating with you through signs, intuition, timing, and inner nudges. But when your mind is loud, cluttered, or attached, you cannot hear these signals. You mistake warnings for coincidences. You chase people who are not aligned with you. You force situations that are falling apart. You fight endings that are happening for your protection. Letting go removes this inner noise, so you can finally hear what life has been whispering all along. When you let go deeply, your perception shifts. You begin to see life not through the lens of fear or longing, but through the lens of truth. You start to understand that everything you lost made space for something greater. You realize that relationships that ended were part of your growth. You see clearly that certain dreams needed to collapse, so new ones could emerge. You begin to recognize that the universe was never against you. It was clearing your path. Letting go reveals a profound wisdom that was hidden beneath your attachments. As you release, your intuition strengthens. Intuition cannot speak through a mind full of noise. Letting go quiets the mind, softens the heart, and reconnects you with your deeper self, the part of you that knows, feels, senses, and understands without overthinking. You start to feel when something is not meant for you. You start to sense when you are forcing something. You begin to know when it's time to walk away. You begin to recognize when a door is closing so a better one can open. This inner knowing becomes clearer and stronger with every layer you release. Letting go also transforms your emotional energy. When you hold on to the past, your energy becomes tangled. You feel drained, heavy, confused, and disconnected. You lose motivation. You lose excitement. You lose the natural flow of creativity and renewal. But when you release emotional weight, your energy becomes lighter. You begin to feel inspired again. You start making decisions from clarity instead of fear. You start waking up with a calmness that does not depend on external circumstances. This shift happens not because life changed, but because you changed from within. The deeper you let go, the easier life becomes. You start to realize that most of your suffering came from resisting life, not from life itself. When you stop fighting what is leaving, what is meant for you begins arriving effortlessly. When you stop clinging to the wrong things, the right things begin aligning naturally. Letting go is not forcing. It is allowing. It is trusting that what is meant for you will enter your life without you chasing or begging or controlling. It is the understanding that life flows more smoothly when you stop interfering with it. Letting go also reshapes how you relate to yourself. When you release old labels, you realize you are not defined by your past. When you release guilt, you realize you deserve forgiveness. When you release fear, you realize you are capable of far more than you believed. When you release judgment, you begin treating yourself with compassion. You stop carrying the weight of every mistake, every regret, every wound. You stop comparing yourself to others. You stop feeling behind. Instead, you start honoring your growth, your journey, your timing, and your truth. You begin to see yourself with kindness. One of the most beautiful truths emerges when you practice deep letting go. Life fills every empty space you create. When you let go of someone, new connections appear. When you let go of a past version of yourself, a new identity unfolds. When you let go of old patterns, new opportunities emerge. When you let go of your fear, courage grows naturally. When you let go of your expectations, peace becomes your default state. Life expands wherever you release resistance. Every time you let go, you rise a little higher. You think more clearly. You feel more deeply. You understand more wisely. You move more gracefully. Life begins to flow through you instead of around you. You become aligned with the natural rhythm of existence instead of fighting against it. And slowly, quietly, beautifully, you begin to notice that life is not something happening to you. It is something unfolding with you. Letting go is not about erasing the past, but about freeing yourself from being controlled by it. It is not about forgetting, but about releasing emotional attachment. It is not about pretending nothing happened, but about integrating the lesson without carrying the pain. When you let go, you begin to understand that every ending was a redirection. Every heartbreak was a cleansing. Every disappointment was guidance. Every loss was preparation. And every release was making space for something bigger, something deeper, something more aligned with your truth. When you trust the process of letting go, you discover that life has always been on your side. It was never the universe blocking you. It was your own attachments blocking your path. The moment you release them, your life begins to open in ways you could never imagine. You stop surviving and start living. You stop aching and start awakening. You stop clinging and start flowing. You stop fearing change and start embracing it. You stop being controlled by your mind and start listening to your soul. And in that space, finally, peace enters. Life aligns. Destiny unfolds, and you return to yourself, lighter, freer, more connected, and more alive than ever before. As you reach the end of this journey, there is one truth that rises above all the lessons, all the wisdom, and all the reflections you've explored. You were never broken. You were buried. Buried under thoughts that were too loud, memories that stayed too long, fears that weren't yours, expectations that exhausted you, and attachments that weighed down your spirit. Letting go is not about becoming someone new. It is about uncovering who you were before the world placed its heaviness on your heart. It is about returning to the person you were before overthinking silenced your inner voice, before fear dimmed your light, before the past became your identity, before the mind convinced you that suffering was normal. Letting go is not a single decision. It is a lifelong practice, a gentle unlearning, a soft surrender, a moment-to-moment willingness to release what no longer serves your peace. Some days you will let go easily. Some days you will struggle. Some days your mind will try to pull you back into old. Some days your heart will resist the idea of moving on. And that is okay. Letting go does not demand perfection. It asks for honesty. It asks for willingness. It asks for patience. And most importantly, It asks for compassion toward yourself. Every small release, every soft exhale, every quiet decision to not hold on as tightly is a victory, and every victory brings you closer to the peace you have always deserved. Life becomes lighter, not because it stops being painful, but because you stop carrying pain unnecessarily. Life becomes clearer, not because the world changes, but because your mind stops distorting it. Life becomes beautiful, not because everything goes your way, but because you stop resisting the natural flow of what is meant to stay and what is meant to go. Peace does not come from controlling life. Peace comes from allowing life, and the more you allow, the more you receive. Letting go is also the doorway to self-discovery. When you stop gripping the past, you discover your strength. When you stop fearing the future, you discover your courage. When you stop identifying with your thoughts, you discover your awareness. When you stop depending on others for validation, you discover your worth. And when you stop living in your head, you discover life again, in all its softness, clarity, and quiet meaning. You begin to realize that peace was not a distant goal you had to chase. Peace was always inside you, waiting for you to clear space for it. Every ending you survived, every heartbreak you healed from, every moment you thought you could not rise from, all of it was shaping you into someone wiser, deeper, calmer, and more awake. You may not have seen it at the time, but the universe was removing what was too heavy, too small, or too temporary for the future version of you. Letting go is not a punishment. It is preparation. It prepares your heart to love better, your mind to think clearer, your spirit to grow stronger, and your path to align more closely with your truth. And now, at this point in your journey, you must understand something essential. You don't let go for others. You don't let go because they deserve forgiveness. You don't let go because the past was easy. You let go because your peace matters more than your attachment to what hurts. You let go because your inner freedom is worth more than any story your mind created. You let go because your life begins the moment you stop living inside your suffering. You let go because you finally choose yourself. Letting go is the art of trusting what you cannot yet see. It is the acceptance that you don't need to understand everything right now. It is the courage to step into the unknown with an open heart. It is the wisdom of knowing that if something is meant for you, it will never require begging or gripping. It is the gentle truth that what leaves your life is making space for what is on its way. And what is on its way is always aligned with your growth. You were not created to live in your mind. You were created to live in the moment. You were not created to suffer endlessly. You were created to awaken. You were not created to cling to what is gone. You were created to flow with life. You were not created to stay small. You were created to expand, and every moment you choose to let go of a memory, a fear, a thought, a story, a person, an expectation, you return to your natural state, a state of clarity, a state of openness, a state of peace. So as you close this chapter, remember this: your life will not change by holding on. Your life will transform the moment you release what has already ended. And when you finally let go, truly let go, not with force but with understanding, life becomes peaceful again. The mind becomes quiet again. The heart becomes soft again. The soul becomes free again. Letting go is not the end. Letting go is the beginning of your truest, calmest, strongest, and most peaceful self.